Hi guys and welcome back to my channel. My name is Funzo and if you're new here, welcome. So on today's video, we're gonna be making Thophi. I I only know how to say it the Vhavenda way. I don't know what it's actually called in English, but it is sort of like a pumpkin dessert or like a pumpkin breakfast, depending on who likes to eat what. So some people like to eat it for breakfast, some people like to eat it as dessert, and some people just like it to eat it like whenever they feel like it. So without further ado, let's get into it. So starting off, we're gonna start off with like a medium pumpkin. So I was just showing things that I'm gonna be using, and all I'm gonna do is just peel the pumpkin. So there's different ways that you can peel the pumpkin now. Back in the day when I used to like peel pumpkins with my grandmother, we used to use like a spoon. Just it takes time and sometimes it hurts your hand, but it's also an efficient way to do it. Or nowadays, since you can afford a peeler anyway, anyhow, you can just use a peeler, or you can cut the pumpkin into smaller pieces, and then it's easier to kind of like cut because you can see I am struggling. When I say I'm struggling, like the table was shaking. You can see like the camera is shaking a little bit. The table was shaking. I'm telling you, like it was proper shaking. So instead of, and it's slippery. Once you start peeling it, it's very slippery. So you can also just cut it into smaller chunks and then just remove the skin, and you can also save the skin, dry it out, use it for whatever you want to. It's the same thing with the seeds. Now you'll see I'm gonna remove the seeds later on in the video, but it's the same thing with the seeds. You can remove the seeds and then dry them for planting for the next season, or you can dry them and then use them how people usually use pumpkin seeds. And right here I'm just cutting it in half, and then after cutting it in half, I'm just going to remove everything that's on the inside. Now a spoon is so much easier, like it's so much easier to get everything. So as you can see here, I'm just removing everything as much as possible. Now, seriously, save the seeds. You can do a lot of things with them. Also, I apologize for the shakiness of the video. Where I touch, where the camera stays, so that I'm shooting this video, it's on the table, and this thing, as I was telling you, it was like I was fighting a whole battle. It's a lot. It's a lot. So I'm sorry for all the shaking. So here it seems like I'm cutting it really fast. I'm not. This is just sped up. I'm gonna show you a clip of me doing this like at the actual pace I was actually doing it in, just in the next few. Also be careful. Now it looks like I was cutting this thing recklessly. I wasn't. I was being careful as much as I could. So also be careful because you're using a knife. It's a sharp knife. And right there, I'm just showing that I'm just removing the top bit. So the reason why you didn't see me like go take something else to try and remove the top bit was because the smaller it is, the easier it is to handle. Most especially for my fat hands, but very tiny ones at the same time. So yeah, be careful as you're using a knife. Don't be just as reckless as me. I know they trained me better in school. In all these videos, we can clearly see that they trained me better in school, but apparently listening and learning is not my forte. So do as I say, not as I do in that portion, basically. So right here, now this step is not really the most necessary step. When it comes to like after I cut it into smaller bits, I'm gonna remove the inside, and that part is not the most necessary step. You don't really need to clean it out. Like you can see at this point, as I'm cutting it up like this, you can just leave it at here. But I just wanted it a little bit neater, so I was removing the inside bit that still like they would look like little hairs on the inside still, because it was not as clean as I wanted it for me. And the size that you're gonna cut your little cubes, it's how fast you want it to cook. So for me, I wanted it to cook like a lot faster, so that doesn't take the whole day. So it's like you making potatoes. Like if you have ever made mash, it's the same concept basically, with the added steps that I just showed you, but it's the same concept. So this specific stuff that I'm talking about right here, it's not necessary, but for me it was. So all I'm just doing is cut the top, and again, I'm not throwing that away. You can use that to make something else, or you can save it and dry it up and use it as a seasoning or something. So right here I washed them, and then there was just a little bit of water that I left them in, and I'm just finishing washing them like inside that water as I put them into my pot. It's a nice deep pot. So right here, this is just the last few that I'm picking up. And then after this, I put in about 2 liters of water. Now, the only amount of water you need is just enough to cover the whole thing. So mind you, I said I'm using a medium pumpkin. So it depends on the size. So with this recipe, the beautiful thing is it depends on whatever size you're using. So if you're using a larger one, then you add the water accordingly. If you're using a smaller one, you add it accordingly. So right here, I'm draining the water, the boiling water that I just did after I boiled them. And so we're going to put this to the side. So as I'm making this, if it was too dry, I'll add that water back in. But in this situation, mine wasn't too dry. It was perfectly cooked. And my mom stored it so that she can drink it like whenever she feels like it, because for her, she says it has health benefits. So if you want to, I am not a doctor, a dietitian, or anything like that. I'm just saying what my mother said. I'm just saying. So right here, you're meshing it. So how you'd be meshing like mashed potatoes, just doing that. You're basically just meshing everything. And in this case, I let it go, like, if you're cooking like potatoes, you don't want to overdo it to the point where it feels like it trapped all the water inside. With this one, I wanted the water in there, and also it takes up water easier, and it itself has a lot of water. So you're just gonna, it's also very easy to mesh. Like, you can get a mesher, but honestly, it's unnecessary. Just a wooden spoon. It was really almost no effort while I was doing this, honestly. So then you're gonna test out the sweetness of your pumpkin. So this one wasn't that sweet. It was not that sweet. Like, the sweetness was very far. Now you're gonna add the sugar according to the sweetness you want. Now you can add sugar. For some people, they'll add honey. For some others, they'll add whatever they want to, or you can leave it out. It's up to you. And then here, this is a thickening agent basically. So I'm using maize meal, right? So any maize meal that you have, you're gonna be using here. This is just to thicken it up. Like, you saw how watery it was, so you don't want to leave it at that. You want it a little bit thick, but not too thick. You're not getting it to a pop situation, right? You want it just thick enough that it's like it can set properly, but not like pop, if you understand what I'm saying. So here you can see I was showing you a whole bowl, but I didn't even use that much. It was probably in total, maybe I used 4 tablespoons in this thing, and you feel it as you're doing it. Like, you will see it being thick. And as you're doing this, you saw in the first time I was adding this, it was not on the stove, and I put it on the stove, but I didn't turn it on yet, and then I turned it on. This is so that you can see as you are adding the maize, if you need to add any more. So as you're adding it and it's it gets the heat plus the water, it thickens up more. You know how maize work, when you're making pap, it gets thicker the more it's on the heat and everything. So for me, the reason why it was not on the heat at that point was because camera. Like, I'm using a phone, so the camera on the top overheats, and then it'll switch off the whole entire thing. So right here, I'm just showing, like, as you leave it and it's simmering, it's like, for it to get thicker, you want the maize to cook. Remember, you put in raw maize, you want it to cook, because you don't want to be tasting like maize where you're like, If you have ever like accidentally put maize in your mouth, you know how that is, or you've gotten a lump or something. Also, as you're doing this, make sure you don't have lumps. Please make sure that you don't have lumps. Now, as you can see, as I'm stirring, you can see how thick it has become. Like, remember in the beginning how thin it was? Look at how thick it has become. Like, but it's not thick, but you can see that it's no longer like watery. And right here, I'm just plating. So you can plate into something that you can close off, and then this does not need to go into a fridge, but you can put it in the fridge. But what my mother also said was this was made so that it can stay on the counter, and you can eat it as you will. And probably for most people in most houses, this was never gonna last. So for us, it's just the two of us, and I made a big batch. So right there is me just finishing up. Guys, I really hope you do try this, and if you do, please, if you're on social media, tag the vendor chef so that I can see like your creations. And I hope you guys enjoyed that, and don't forget to subscribe, like, and share, and leave a comment down below which other videos you would love to see. And thank you for watching. Until next time, bye.